Xavier. I welcome you all for joining with us on this webinar. For over 100 days now, we have been battling COVID 19 around the world. With this lockdown in all over the country, we all are impacted with multiple challenges coping with work and home responsibilities due to sudden shift of working from offices to work from home. Change is the end result of all true learning. The objective of this webinar is to learn what initiatives have been taken place by AICTE for higher education during this pandemic situation and learn from scientific writing workshop which is designed to unlock the potential of early and mid-career researchers. Here today you will learn how to improve your writing skills and publish a research paper in a journal with a high impact factor. You will learn how to review a paper effectively and how to respond to reviewer comments. Discover how communicating your work can boost the impact of your research and help you garner citations. I'm extremely grateful to our honorable speakers today who have joined us and spared time from their demanding schedules to enlighten us with their motivating thoughts. We will start the session by welcoming our first speaker of the day, Ms. Chidam, Regional Director with Elsevier, who operates from Singapore. Welcome, Chidam, and thank you for joining us. Request you to please take over.
Thank you, Garima. Let's see if I can add this. Yes, good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining for this session today. First of all, I do hope that you and your families are all keeping well during these challenging times. A little bit about myself. So my name is Chidam Bielderige. I joined Elsevier in Amsterdam in 2018. I recently relocated to Singapore to work with my colleagues in this region. I work with a wonderful team of very dedicated account managers. Garima Tulan is one of them. As Garima mentioned earlier, there's no question that the COVID-19 pandemic has really forced significant change on many of us. I do believe that technology, however, has really enabled us to understand what's going on and to keep functioning. So from our end, I'm very happy to report that our teams are working tirelessly to keep supporting the research and academic communities across the world. We've switched to remote work and virtual channels, and the transition has been relatively smooth. As we are a company operating on a global scale, we've been having many conversations within our research communities, and it has been really great to hear how many are taking this time to adapt and to continue to focus on their strategic goals, improving on skill sets. And it is really our aim to continue to provide the best support to help you your research and institutional objectives. So I wanted to briefly highlight a couple of freely available initiatives that we have introduced since the start of this pandemic. So first, we have the COVID-19 Information Center. This holds all the latest research and links to over 20,000 articles, including journals such as The Lancet and Cell Press. We are providing specific assistance to researchers who are currently working to develop vaccines and therapies. And we are also working with campuses all over to support the sudden pivot to online education for millions of students, enabling remote access and working with textbooks. So if you would like to find out more about these initiatives, please do reach out to myself or my team afterwards. And today's session is also in light of this overall aim to help support the research and academic community. And we will take you through some of the ways in which we can help you maintain your research excellence. So I do hope that you will find this session enjoyable and effective. And yeah, with that, I will now hand it over to Garima.
Thank you, Chidam, for your wonderful welcome address. Now, since Professor Rajiv Kumar has not joined us, so we will I'm pleased to invite our next speaker, respected Colonel Venkat, Director of Faculty Development Cell in AICTE. Just a brief about his Introduction. Colonel Venkat is an army officer from the Corps of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering, a master's in mechanical engineering. He has held many appointments in his career since 1991 within and outside the army. He has also represented Indian Army in Russia as its defense attaché for 3 years, a rare feat. The officer presently is on deputation as Director, Faculty Development Cell, AICTE. Thank you for joining us, sir. From your diligent schedule, please enlighten us by taking over the session. I would request you to please share your screen. Thank you.
Good morning and thank you. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Garima, good morning. And first of all, thanks a lot. That was a very nicely presented kind of a brief of an introductory speaker. And first of all, on behalf of AICT, I congratulate everyone here, especially the Elsevier platform who is organizing this particular webinar, and a very, very relevant subject chosen by them in a times which do not mention being spoken so many times. Each one of us know as to under what circumstances we are going through. And I hope at the end of this, people are going to be benefiting immensely and hugely because of the various initiatives taken not only by us, but by various people, and especially the biggest platforms like you, the Elseviers. And an AICT, we take a lot of pride in telling as of now that in spite of the setback which has been received in the world all over, AICT has always been in forefront for all the activities and to ensure that the quality is not let down. Especially when I use the word quality, it pertains to higher education, be it in the field of engineering, management, architecture, pharmacy, name a thing, town planning. AICT has always been there. And it's not a hidden fact that what this unprecedented lockdown has led to is an absolute revolution in the digital learning. Now, this was something which was always continuing, even though parallel face to face learning has been the traditional way of learning. But this e content based learning and webinar based conferences, seminars, conducting solutions, arriving at posing problem solution was always existing. Only thing is that this thing has now ensured that this particular issue comes to the forefront, and hopefully this is what is the future. But very proud and I'm happy to announce on behalf of AICT that we had our Professor Rajiv Kumar also was supposed to be speaking, but for some reasons he has not been able to log on. We'll try to get in touch with him. In the meantime, I will speak just about myself, though already covered by Garima. I happen to be heading the faculty development cell in AICT, which encompasses everything what a particular faculty loosely called as teachers. That is their promotion, their career, their research, their advancements, opportunities for them, their growth, their research related subjects, how to support them, how to show them the path, how to make sure that they come into contact with the students, the extended students platform when it comes to their parents, the institutions. Basically, everything concerns to an institute is being handled. And I would just like to bring out and highlight the various initiatives have been taken by AICT, which I would request everybody, in case if suppose it's of any importance and value to anybody who's listening, because I can understand that the people who are in the audience today comprises of a mixed batch of people who can be a mix of institutes, faculties, students, learners, researchers, scholars. Name a person, because I see a very huge number of people who have logged on. So I congratulate Elsevier at the start only. It's a very, very well organized and a very thoughtful of you people to have come out with this. And I thank you for actually making me come here and speak. Just to name a few activities which has happened during these specific lockdown, and the activities which were in continuation, which have taken up a boost as we are approaching towards this middle of the lockdown phases. First of all, let me tell you that the online platform has been promoted very extensively. In AICT case, if suppose you can just log on, there is a portal by the name of NEAT, NEAT, National Educational Alliance for Technology. Now, this portal promotes all ed companies or all educational platforms which are online to log on, register themselves, and subsequently post logging on and registering offer their services through AICT to various institutes, technical institutes, which are spread all across India. Uh, and it's absolutely the call of the day today that whatever services what anybody can offer, it should be made available to all the learners who are across throughout the spectrum. Maybe it's students, maybe it's teachers, researchers, maybe it can be the faculty, senior, junior, anybody. And there have been a very welcome. We already have more than 600 institutions who have already benefiting from this, from the platform of NEET, wherein more than 350 educational companies or the educational platforms have logged on and offering their services. Suffice to say that anybody who does have an AICT recognition, that you have come forward and supporting us during these times, which is being made available. And for every platform which is coming there, even though initially it was a chargeable platform, but during these times we have more or less recommended or requested the companies to come forward and offer it to ensure free of cost and ensure that the people look up to this particular platform and get into the basic concept of e-learning. That is one. Number two, if you see, keeping in lines with the curriculum which was always being mandated, based on which everything else revolves in an institute. The biggest subject always happens to be a curriculum. And unfortunately, the curriculum was a very routine, mundane curriculum which was going on for many years, which always led to being taught, being learned, come under an evaluation system, getting marks, and that is how the people were going with very little focus on activities, which was the call of the day, that is the research, innovation, interaction with the industry, and subsequently the hallmark of everything is ultimately the placement of the students. Students get placed, they get good appointments. That is how good the teacher is, that is how good an institution is, and that is the way uh, anything is judged by today. So this curriculum was revised. Post revision of this curriculum, this has now been given to all AICT approved institutes, and which is based on outcome based model for undergraduate and postgraduate courses in engineering and management. And the salient features is, the main biggest feature of this is that the credit has been reduced from 220 earlier to 160, with 60 credit which is now pending, which has since been shifted towards the internship. And this is in line with the requirements of the industry, which is the 4.0. Just a small rundown of this, actually speaking, as to what is this beneficiary about. This has a mandatory summer internship, which has been made mandatory. I would be speaking on this a few words. A student induction program has for the first time been introduced. I would be letting each one of you know as to what is this. Only thing is that primarily now today, because of non-initiation or non-opening of the institution and colleges, this is a subject which is also being taken online. Presently, anything which I am speaking is going online. Encouraging innovation. This was, though this was already there, but this has now been promoted in a very big manner, with special credits being given in case if some innovation comes to a suitable platform. A new course on Constitution of India. Now, this is the first time this course on Constitution of India and Indian knowledge tradition. These have also been introduced. even though virtual laboratories were supposed to be established and been into existence into institutes. But in case if everybody knows, AICT handles a far, far more number of institutes all across India in the most rural places. Bringing this in each and every institute is a big challenge, but that is what is the focus now, to bring in the virtual laboratories and encouraging problem solving approach. Now, this is something which is specific to that district, to that village, to that town, rather than coming into a city level institute and then finding a solution to a problem which exists here. It does not manifest into itself into a problem which somebody must be facing in rural areas. So every problem which is being generated in a rural area is now being taken as a problem which has now been given to institutes for them to come out with a innovative solution. Small word about what's an induction program for students. This induction program for students was primarily speaking initiated with just to ensure that anybody who immediately comes after 12th into an institute should not feel left out or should not feel himself out of place or out of context, because we have people who come from far off places to institutes because of their good academic performance and they are not able to cope up and adjust. So a 3 weeks induction program has been made mandatory in which a student is made to learn. This I said is presently being taken on an online platform. Other major subject which has been taken is internship has been made mandatory during the student phase. Now, in case of the internship has been made mandatory during the student phase, it quite augurs very well for the system. It is these students only tomorrow, some of them, after doing their masters, do come towards the teaching system. And in case if suppose they have had a background of internship with industries during the student phase, they are in a better position to understand the problems. They are in a better position to understand what are the need of the hour and what is the industry which demands. Now, towards this, AICT has come forward and we have signed MOUs with various organizations, various industries, R&D laboratories. It can be MSMEs also. It can be some very small industry being owned by an individual or by a group. The details of which are existing on our website. Another major subject which AICT has introduced is the examination reforms. Now, this is something which has been spoken many number of times. Each one of us is aware that it's actually speaking ultimately the marks which matters. So the student who gets marks is the one who is better placed, and the marks is based on purely question answers method of evaluation as of today. The proposal which has come in and it is now under implementation in various institutes, this has been tried for implementation. All the students and the examination should be conducted by the institutions to check the student knowledge, their concept and skills, not a replica of the précis to be written down in answers. This is a major initiative. As I am speaking, this examination reforms webinar is also going simultaneously for the last 2 weeks. And today, I'm also speaking there after this on the subject wherein we have 500 faculties who are also listening on various examination reform methods which has happened. Now comes is a major initiative of AICT which affects everybody now. For it is now mandatory for all AICT approved faculties to undergo technical teachers training, or the word is being used is National Initiative for Technical Teachers Training. It's mandatory for the purposes of their clearing probation or their subsequent promotion in life. There have been 8 online modules. If you would again focus, I use the word online. Again, we are using the word digital and how correct the whole thing stands today, that the complete platform for technical teachers training has been made online. And there are 8 online modules which a particular teacher needs to be clearing for his regularization in an AICTE approved institute, after which he is also supposed to be going for an industrial mentorship followed by a mentorship in his institute. Now, why did I mention all this? All this I mentioned so that I can drive each one of you towards the initiatives of AICTE. And in all this, one common factor remains everywhere. And that is that each one of these wants to focus everybody to be slightly innovative, everybody to understand the latest requirements, everybody to be aligned with the need of the day, which is innovation. There is nothing today which anybody can or should feel as existing, I will continue and continue to survive in the system. So innovation is something which leads to a thought. Before a thought of innovation comes, there has to be a problem. A problem has to be identified. You work on it. The problem and the work together relates to research. And we at the AICTE have always supported extensively to anybody for that matter, whether he is a faculty, whether he is a student, whether he is a research scholar, towards his research related subjects. We give a whole lot of financial assistance. We show them the path. In case if suppose somebody is still in any confusion, doubts, we give him problems. We make him connect to the industry. We make him connect to the issues relating on ground, so that research is something which is extremely important in the growth of every teacher. And it would be incorrect at this point of time to say that only the teachers are the most important people in the system. No, it's not like that. It's a very, very balanced system, and each one of you know it's the institution, the students, and the teachers. But amongst the three, the triangle can be whichever way. It's maybe an equilateral triangle, can move, rotate, whichever way. But always the teachers happens to be standing at the top of the triangle. If you have a meeting point at the top, it is the teachers who drive the system. An institution is known good or bad by teachers. So there cannot ever be a question, or cannot ever be a system wherein we can say that we can survive in an organization or a technical institution, especially of higher level, without having a capable teachers. And I'm extremely thankful to you people and your platforms like this, wherein you connect people for research, wherein you give them various platforms, you show them correct path, you make them understand and make them relevant to the existing issues and existing problems. Uh, it is this only which was always required. Faculties, the academia, the industry, the service providers, and us today in between, the AICTE, to come together on a common platform and find out a solution. And in case if suppose people do see in the present times, practically every industry or every field is either completely halted, or even if it's not halted completely, they must be working at their half capability, or for that matter, even at 1/3 of their capability. It is only this education, maybe elementary school level or higher education, is something which didn't even stop for a day. A day is also very long. It never stopped. And in fact, this is the only platform which has been non-stop working. To the contrary, if I may say, this is the only platform which has actually taken jump by leaps and bounds. And everybody seems to have come forward and aligned with this thing. And it's always a pleasure speaking to each one of you, and especially in a platform wherein, we have 2,500. I see your figure. I just crossed 2,500. So it's going to people across the board, I can see. And hopefully at the end of it, people do take benefit of this. I again congratulate everybody. I congratulate the people behind this. I congratulate you people to have come out with a vision. And special thanks I would like to mention, if I may, because I won't know most of the people in your system with whom I get connected. Sohail, Vishal, and Renu. It's great pleasure to be speaking here. I would once again like to say thanks to everybody, and me being director in AICT, All India Council for Technical Education of Delhi, being the regulatory body for all technical institutes in India. Even though we no more act as a regulatory, we are more or less like a facilitator wherein we keep trying to help people on all their issues. I'm always available. Anybody wishes to take benefit out of us, anybody wishes to have any queries, questions, my email ID is known. My contact number also is known. You are at liberty and free at any given time to just put a word, and you will always be getting a reply back on that. Thank you. Wishing you all the best. And thanks once again. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks, Garima. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There are a few questions that the audience have put up, and I just want you to help us answer them. So one of the question is, are we not compromising with core subjects while reducing the credits?
Correct. Correct. This question has often been debated at our side also. One needs to please understand, today when we reduce the credits from 220 to 160, what are we focusing on? Earlier, in case if you see, the subject was driven to such an extent which could have always been covered in the lesser time frame. What have we introduced? We have introduced for them to have mandatory initially internship. They have a mandatory period wherein they're going to be adjusting. And the outcome of this is, this has already been trial tested in 6 institutes in Rajasthan, and absolutely there has been no compromise. On the contrary, it has come out with flying remarks by people that I wish these kind of things would have happened earlier, wherein we could have benefited from this, because this has resulted in giving us additional time for induction. This has resulted us in having them related and connected to the industry. What physical learning was happening sitting in the class today, in case if you see, by just having a theoretical learning, has now resulted into a practical hands-on approach. I personally feel this is a step in the right direction. Even though we are on a method of actually evaluating the result and outcomes on this, and I will surely take this as a feedback point, and we will keep this in our mind while we are putting our submissions for this.
Okay, so the next question is, when will the new AICT curriculum start, or is it expected?
The new, as I just now mentioned, the new curriculum for AICT has just been introduced on a trial basis. We are awaiting the remarks from it. And very rightfully, one of the remarks has come straight away from your platform only, that we would be compromising on the major subjects in case if suppose we reduce the credit. So these are the ones we are waiting for. Like this, we have got many more recommendations and proposals. We are in the process of compiling it, and hopefully from the coming academic year, we will put it on a larger scale for implementation across India. And maybe the next year, this becomes mandatory. It's all a probability, but that is how we are planning to go for it.
One last question. So somebody asked that, does AICT provide grants, specific grants, to acquire an important software if a researcher needs it? And how to go about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Anybody, but first of all, I will tell you, it's applicable to the faculties of AICT approved only. That is one. Number two, anybody can apply as long as he is having a mandatory QR that I told earlier. He has to be from AICTE approved institute. We have grants not only for this particular specific question which has been quoted to me that he wants to have some research related software. Was your question related to research related software?
Yes, sir. I think it was
perfect. Perfect. In case if suppose anybody is hearing it, it's not only limited to research. We have numerous amount of grants which are handled from my office itself. It pertains to institutional development, it pertains to faculty development, it pertains to student development, and it pertains towards research. And to come to this specific question of yours, we have research related subject by the name of RPS. The scheme goes by the name of RPS, Research Project Scheme, wherein we give Indian currency 25 lakhs to a researcher if he is coming up with a proposal of research. In that 25 lakhs, he is at liberty to purchase whatever he purchases as long as he has given it to us in the initial status as his mandatory requirement. So software, if I may assure that person, whosoever it is, he needs to just get in touch with us with his research proposal. He needs to go to our portal of AICTE. Once he goes to the website of AICTE, he will be getting various schemes. He needs to go under the scheme head of faculty development schemes. In that faculty development schemes, he needs to go under RPS. He needs to get in touch there. He needs to read how to apply and be rest assured.
Thank you so much. So many questions, sir. We'll probably compile a few of them and ask you. Sir, just one last question, because I see a lot of people asking this question. So one question is that when the UGC care list of journals is finalized, does AICTE have any role or suggestions to make? Because a few of the journals are very specific to the domain AICTE works in. So, sir, what is your take on that?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever the UGC finalizes the list is always come to us for our proposals and recommendations. We generally, as a policy, you also understand these are two regulatory bodies. Generally, as a policy, we do not overrule any of the proposals or recommendations which are already existing in that. On the other side, we go on to add. We do add few from our side, which we feel or we also see are the important ones, especially the ones which pertains to the various subjects which come directly under our charter and mandate. So we have a major role to play in this.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your answers, Garima.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Venkat, for such overwhelming words and addressing questions and answering in details for our research professors, scholars, and librarians and other attendees. I'm sure everyone is delighted with his presence today to make today's session more impactful. Since due to some technical issues, Professor Rajiv Kumar could not join us yet, we will go ahead with author workshop. So now I'm inviting Mr. Vishal Gupta, who happens to be customer consultant with Elsevier. Mr. Vishal Gupta has a bachelor's degree in industrial microbiology and master's in biotechnology. Mr. Gupta has 12 years of work experience in domains of biotechnology, publishing, and data analytics. Currently, he is working with Elsevier as customer consultant South Asia, where he is responsible for supporting Scope Science Direct Mendeley users in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. His major responsibilities include engaging with ministries and key consortiums. Vishal is a certified presenter for Author Workshop and a Level 3 certified Mendeley trainer. He has an impeccable history of conducting successful workshops pan-India during this lockdown period and has been receiving outstanding feedback for the same. Over to you, Vishal.
Thank you so much, Garima. A very good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are safe. Please stay home. Organizations today are implementing remote work as a necessary step to continue our day-to-day operations. Our lives have been impacted, and we understand that it is challenging to juggle multiple responsibilities during this time when boundaries of work life and home life are blurred. This trend of remote work will likely become the new normal, requiring most of us to adapt to changes needed while providing an opportunity to increase innovation and efficiency. With this, I welcome all of you to our to the next part of our webinar today, which is the scientific writing workshop. Just to give you a brief about what Elsevier is. So Elsevier is a global information analytics company specializing in science and health. We help institutes and professionals advance healthcare, open science, and improve performance for the benefit of humanity. Combining content with technology, supported by operational efficiency, we turn information into actionable knowledge. Elsevier empowers those who empower to use it. There have been a lot of pictures going around the internet, but this particular picture speaks volumes for itself. It clearly says science, education, and research are the pillars of building a progressive nation. And I think this is something which this current pandemic situation has made us realize. And it has also made us realize that for researchers, there are two very important keywords. One is information, and second is knowledge. Now, information is freely available. You can just type a few keywords on Google and you can get millions of results. That is information. But is that knowledge? Probably no. For researchers, that is not knowledge, because the most important word in any researcher's career is peer review. If the information is not peer reviewed, it cannot be considered as knowledge. The main purpose of research is to inform action, to prove a theory, and to contribute developing knowledge in a field or study. Innovation is about taking inventions to the marketplace by translating scientific knowledge into products, services, and offerings for economic growth. Every researcher today is striving hard to find opportunities to innovate and contribute to its institutions and nation's benefit. And these efforts are bringing a change in you researchers' needs. Today's researchers like you are more demanding than ever before and look for citing impactful work, evaluate your own impact, be more organized, find relevant collaborators, manage research data, and much, much more. And hence, you look for tools that help you in achieving these objectives more effectively. So let us come to our main discussion, which is understanding the research workflow and then understanding how do we proceed with it. Now, the research workflow might look very simple, but when you go in depth, it is really, really complicated because it branches out to different sections. And each section, again, is an entirely total, it is a subject in itself which you can spend a lot of time to learn. If we simplify this research workflow, it would look something like this. And as the research workflow flows, what I'm trying to show you on your screen is that every product of science of Elsevier forms a key part of the workflow. Right from generating current awareness till the time you submit your article, get reviewed, or manage your career, Elsevier tools are present. Researcher centricity is the key concept behind our activities and products. And when we look at the entire picture of this research workflow, Elsevier is there to help you out. Let us understand the history of journal publishing. When did it actually start? So the first journal was published in 1665, which was called Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society. You would be surprised to know that this journal still exists as part A and part B. This journal contained three very important parts of journal that a journal should possess, the three qualities. First, registration and archiving, which clearly means that any research that is published in that journal along with the author needs to be registered, and that piece of information needs to be archived for future use. The second important feature was dissemination. So by dissemination, they meant that whatever is published here should be disseminated across the globe so that more and more people are able to use it, use this information, innovate, and come up with something new. And the third important part of this journal was peer review. So it was made very clear that whatever is being published in a journal needs to be reviewed, needs to be assessed for its scientific quality, and only then it is deemed to be fit to be published in that journal. I think all of you would agree that even today, these three important points form a very important part of any journal. If you look at the scientific publishing industry nowadays, there are more than 5,500 scientific journals. Elsevier is only one of them. There are more than 35,000 peer-reviewed scholarly journals, more than 26 lakh published articles every year, and more than 40 lakh unique authors that publish every year. And this number keeps on increasing at a year-on-year growth of 3%. If you look at the entire industry, there are top 4 publishers, Elsevier, Springer, Wiley, and Taylor and Francis, that cover 40% of all the journals. So how is a journal actually organized? What are the parts of a journal? So there are 4 major parts of a journal. So the first part of a journal is the people, or who are the people behind this journal. And the people are the editor, the advisory board, and the publisher. Now, for you, publishers meaning is Elsevier or Taylor and Francis, but publisher is actually a person. So every publisher like Elsevier has a job role of a publisher who manages the entire journal, right? So you get the copyright information, he designs the entire editorial structure, etc. We'll learn more about it. The next important part is the aims and scope of a journal. So a journal needs to specify what is its aim and what is scope within which it will work, right? Which is very. Then is the quality aspect of a journal. So a journal may be termed as a good journal, bad journal, average journal, predatory journal, anything. So there is a quality aspect, and there are certain benchmarking that is done at your end also to ensure that the journal is fit. Then the last part is about the access. So there may be open access journals, there may be subscribed journals, right? So basically, that again forms a part of your decision making when you choose a journal. Let's take them one by one. So who is an editor and what is his responsibilities? So if we look at the responsibilities of an editor, he is responsible for scientific quality. So he is the person who checks papers and decides. So he has the veto power. He will decide whether a journal gets, an article gets published in a journal or not. He is the person who coordinates the entire peer review process. So you, at the time of submission of a journal, may suggest a few reviewers, but the editor has the final choice of choosing them or choosing some new reviewers. Then he's the one who decides the aims and scope of a journal, of course, along with the publisher and the editorial board. He also advises on the future of the journal, where this journal is going to go, what are the other topics they are going to cover in the future. And the editor usually is a professor of higher grade in an esteemed university. And there are often a team of editors where you have a chief editor and assistant editors, right? Then comes the editorial board. So who is on the editorial board is decided by the publisher and the editors. These are people who are basically experts in subject areas, a few subject areas of the entire broad that the journal is catering to. And they can be consulted whenever they are required. And they sometimes are involved in the review process, not necessarily because they have specific reviewers, right? And the board is the main role of the board is to advise on special issues, on review papers, on the future of the journal, as I said. So the editor would consult the advisory board on how to go about and making a journal more successful. And then they are the ones who represent the authors and readers of the journal. So they are the people who are going to hear your voice. Now, as I said, there is a publisher. So publisher is actually a person. And what is the job of a publisher? So he is responsible for the overall management of a journal. So right from the beginning, he's the one who finalizes the editors, and then one of the editors is chosen amongst them. He provides the entire editorial infrastructure. So if in the audience, if one of you is the editor of any journal, you would know that there is a software where you get the articles on which you have to provide the feedback, etc. All this is managed by the publisher itself. His responsibility is to arrange the publication of the accepted manuscript and then typesetting it. So basically, if you look at any publisher's article, be it Elsevier, Springer, IEEE, you would see a particular format in which the journal or the article is published. Who does this? This is the job of a publisher. And then one of the important jobs is to make sure that the journal is promoted to the right audience. It is being marketed so that there is more viewership, more readership. When there is more viewership and readership, it is obvious that there are more probability of getting citations. So he's the one who makes a journal visible. Talking about the aims and scope of any journal. So a journal always has to define these few things. First, it has to define the subject that it is dealing with, right? Nowadays, most of the journals are moving towards the multidisciplinary route. So they are publishing articles in almost every subject area or multiple subject areas. Earlier, they used to be very subject-specific journals, right? It has to also define, that will actually define the audience. So whichever subjects you pick, you will decide who's the audience who's going to read these articles. Then type of articles. So one journal may rely heavily on review articles or letters. Some may focus on conference papers. Some may focus on original research articles. So that also is mentioned in the aims and scope. Then comes the quality aspect. So, we all know the most commonly used quality factor is impact factor. But again, all journals do not have impact factor. So there are other alternative metrics that are associated with the journal. And then whether a journal is associated with a society or with any group or with any institution, that is also mentioned under aims and scope. On your screens now, you can see a sample of aims and scope of the journal tetrahedron. So you can see that it is clearly mentioning the areas of research. It is mentioning what the journal covers, specific areas within what topic, then what form of papers are accepted, and if there are any review articles that are being currently accepted. So this is a good sample of aims and scope of a journal. Now, I think this is one of the most important and talked about factors, which is the quality aspect. So first of all, there are several indicators that aim to measure quality. I would like to take this discussion upfront and let you know that never decide the quality of a journal, never, based on one factor. Because just to give you an example, all of us here in this room, which is close to 2,540 people in the room right now, all of us will have good qualities and we will also have some bad qualities, right? Now, if somebody starts judging us only based on the bad qualities, do you think it is right? Do you think it is appropriate? No. So basically, your good side is not being highlighted. So even when you consider journals or anything in life, it is always advised to consider multiple factors. And that is why I want to put it up front. Never judge a journal based on one quality. That means one factor, right? So the most popular factor that we use is the impact factor, right? And there are certain alternative metrics also that are available, like CiteScore, SNIP, SJR, which we hardly look at, but we should look at, right? So let us see how impact factor is actually calculated. So if you look on your screen, if I need to calculate the impact factor of a journal in 2019, in the denominator, I will take all the articles published in the last 2 years. So impact factor is calculated for either last or 2 year or 5 year, right? So if we are taking the 2 year impact factor, we take all the articles published in the last 2 years, that is 17, 18 in the denominator, and we take all citations received by those articles that were published in 17, 18 in the current year, which is 2019. That will give us the impact factor of a journal. Now, impact factor calculation does not include conference proceedings. Hence, a lot of other subject areas are biased. For example, computer science. You will rarely find a very high impact factor journal in computer science because most of the articles published are in the form of conference proceedings. And then most of the journals do not have impact factor. So you might see on the internet, lot of journals claiming we have H index, we have impact factor, so and so. Please do not be tricked by that. They are usually fake journals, usually predatory journals that try to attract you. Anyone can calculate impact factor. As you can see on the screen, they can calculate using this formula. The authenticated impact factor is only available for the journals that are mentioned under JCR reports. So if you need to consider impact factor, look for the current JCR report and see whether the journal has the impact factor or not. Now, there are several other metrics that exist apart from just impact factor. One such metric is the CITE score. Now, this factor was particularly launched in 2017 after a lot of feedback from the researchers that a lot of journals, a lot of good journals do not have impact factor, and it becomes very difficult for them to judge whether a journal is good or bad. So Elsevier came up with this particular factor, which is called CITE score. So the best part is CITE score takes into account all types of articles, including conference proceedings, because again, it is subject neutral. So there is no bias, and it gives you the true picture of citations per article. That is what you actually need to know. So if I want to calculate CITE score of any journal in 2019, I will take all the articles published in the last 3 years. So it is a little different from impact factor. It takes into account last 3 years. So I take into account all the last 3 years articles in my denominator. In my numerator, I will take all the citations that are currently received for those articles. Simple, same as impact factor, almost similar, but it takes a 3-year window, and it is the absolute number, which also includes all article types. So again, this is an alternative metric that will help you decide the quality within two journals. Let's say they do not have impact factor, and it's still a good journal, and you need to judge which one is the best. You can always go to CITE score. There are two more important factors, which are SNIP and SJR. So I hope some of you have heard about SCImago journal ranking, which is a prestige metric, and SNIP, which is a subject source neutral metric. I would recommend all of you to go online and search these terms, SJR, SNIP, and try and understand it. It's pretty simple. Just go. This is a sort of an exercise for you. If you know these terms, get a feel of it. Okay. So another very talked about topic, which is the open access. So there are a lot of misconceptions that go around in our industry about open access. What it is, why is a journal being charged so high, etc., etc. So let us clear some doubts here, right? So if you look at the world scenario, most of the journals are subscription journals. That means any institute or library needs to subscribe to these journals so as the users can have access, right? There are also open access journals that are available, and the mechanism is that the authors or the funding agency needs to pay an article processing charge upfront to make the article free from day one. Now, nowadays, most of the journals, the subscription journals, have turned to hybrid journals. That means they publish subscription articles, but they also have an option within that journal to make an article open access. So you will see a lot of journals nowadays, when you go through the content, if you have access to Science Direct, you would see that few of the articles within a subscribed journal are marked as open access. Those journals are actually the hybrid journals, right? Now, two very important and very prominent publishing mechanism that exist in the open access category are: one, gold open access. Now, you need to understand that gold open access is the method where the author or the funding agency or the institute pays upfront an article processing charge to make that article free from day one. By free, I mean open access, right? Now, there is a lot of misconception that whenever an article is made free, it tends to get more citations, which is, I would say, generically correct. But imagine I give you access to an article which is poorly written, which has very less impact, and which is not that useful. Would you cite that article? No. So the most important part for any journal or any article to get a citation is quality. 80%, more than 80% in the world are subscribed journals. All of them are heavily cited. So the type of publication, not necessarily every time defines the citations that it is going to get. So it is always and always quality, right? The second method of publishing is called green open access. Now, this is a little different from gold open access. Because in this method, the manuscripts can be shared into any institutional repository after an embargo period or a block period. So what do we mean by block period? So an article, when it is published, it is blocked for, let's say, 6 months to 2 years. After that block period, the article becomes open access. It is accessible to everyone to read. That is when you can start sharing that article on institutional repositories and other platforms as per your wish. Of course, go through the copyright agreement that you sign with every publisher in detail. Sometimes we don't do that, but we should, because that is where you would get all the instructions of what you can do once you publish with a journal and what you can't do, right? Okay, so let's come to the editorial process now. So how does this work? So basically the editorial processes make sure that it selects the suitable articles for publication and publishes them in one particular format. But the entire base of an editorial process is the peer review process. Why is this important? So basically, it is important to make it essential to filter good science from not so good science, right? So it defines quality. Peer reviewers ensure that the paper is written in the right context, is written with the right approach. It has future impact. It has economic impact. There's originality. There is a lot of significance. And they also provide useful insights for you to further improve your paper, right? So peer review is that important. So editors will basically do a preliminary check, but the in-depth check is done by reviewers. Now, reviewers are usually odd numbered. So you will either get 3 reviewers or 5 reviewers or 7 reviewers. That is because the editor always wants to have a consensus. He wants to have yes or no clearly. So if there are 5 reviewers, 3 say yes and 2 say no, the editor has an easier decision to make, right? Where if he had 4, 2 say yes and 2 say no, then again, he's the one who has to take a decision. But irrespective of the fact that what reviewers say, editor has the final say. So the reviewers may suggest that the paper is good enough, but again, the final decision is taken by the editor, and it's the editor who informs the author on whether an article is accepted or rejected. Now, on your screen, you will find a simplified diagram of how the editorial process actually works. So you would see the start button. That is where you as authors submit an article. First thing, it goes to the editor's desk. Now you need to realize editors of good journals receive on an average 50 to 100 papers every day, right? They get a lot of huge submissions in journals across the globe. Now, editors, you need to understand editors are also working in their own subject areas, in their own research. Reading 50 papers in a day, irrespective of what anyone is doing, is a Herculean task. And I think even if I have to ask you to read 10 papers in a day with the same concentration, it is virtually impossible, right? So reading 50 papers in a day, and that too taking a decision on whether to accept or reject a paper, for a paper that you have taken 1 year probably to write, is a big decision to make. And the editor is being vested with the power and the responsibility to make sure he does that with efficiency. So we have to understand as researchers, as authors, what editors want. If we know this, then we can actually simplify our writing style. We can improvise on our writing style. We can do some additional checks before submitting an article, and that can increase the probability of actually getting getting accepted for the next round, which is the peer review round. 60 to 70% of all documents are desk rejected from the editor's table. Now you need, again, if you had this information, that what exactly the editor looks at in the 5-10 minutes that he has for every paper, a paper that you actually took 1 year to write, right? What did he look at in the first 5-10 minutes? So on your screen, you would see what editors actually want. The editors want a scientifically correct paper. They need to ensure that it reports something new, something novel. Again, this is depending on subject to subject, it will differ. It reports something significant, something that can be used and to create a social or an economic impact. And then the paper is of interest to the readers. This is something which is very important. See, the job of an editor is to make sure that the impact factor of a journal increases year on year, or the site score of a journal increases year on year. We saw the calculation of impact factor and site score. What was in the numerator? We had the citations in the numerator, and the denominator, we had number of articles. Now, number of articles are usually fixed, or they differ by a very small margin year on year. But what impacts the impact factor and site score is the number of citations. How will an article or a journal get citations? Only if it is visible a lot of times, it is properly marketed, there is readership. If you don't read something with interest, you will never finalize whether I want to cite it or not. So the paper must be of interest to the readers, right? So that is something the editor will want to look at. What he would, so there are again a few things that immediately prompt him to reject a paper, right? So he has designed this, the editors, and this is out of a lot of discussion with the editors, we've summarized these points, which are the first topic is the topic of research not trending or not impactful. And I think that relates to the fourth point of what editors want, which is interest to the readers. So the topic is not trending. By trends, I mean, let's say, what is the trending topic today? Coronavirus. Anything published with the trend word coronavirus will get attention, will get readership, right? And surprisingly, other diseases are losing interest, right? And more people are now focusing on working something with coronavirus. Now, it's not necessary that people from the medical background or pharma background are working. There are people working under psychology. There are people working under biochemistry. There are people working under other subject areas of how coronavirus, because this situation has impacted everyone, right? Right from economy to business to psychology to medical science and pharma, drug development, every field is being affected. So does not mean that one topic can be impactful in one subject area. There can be multiple subject areas, and you need to figure that out, right? Then poorly written abstracts. I think the most important part of any article is the abstract. It's the heart of the article. Now, editors would definitely read the abstract with a lot of interest. Now, if the abstract is poorly written, if there are language errors, if there are grammatical mistakes, the editor usually tends to lose interest. And he does not have the time to understand or figure out what you have written or correct your abstract. What he would do, he would simply reject your paper, right? So please make sure before you submit an article, your language is correct. We will talk more about this. Then too many or irrelevant self-citations. Now, it is understood that a lot of you might be working in the same subject area, and you would have published a paper previously, and citing that paper makes sense. So if that really makes sense, the editor would wholeheartedly accept it. But if he finds out that there are too many irrelevant self-citations, that is a trigger for him to reject a paper. Now, you need to understand, editors today are smart enough. They have enough tools, they have enough information to find out entire information about your particular citation, the quality of citation, the level of citation. So they can make a decision very quickly, right? Then poor geographical distribution of citations. So the editor wants to know why does he read your paper? Because he wants to know whether you have done enough research or not, whether you have the complete information and knowledge or not. How will he make that out? If he sees that you have cited articles only from India or only from your particular state, which means that you have not done enough research across the globe. So any research may be very specific to your local region, but there may be similar issues that may have happened across the globe. So the editor would want to see how well read you are. Have you read everything that is going on across the world or not? And have you cited them? Then the editor would also want to see whether you have cited the recent articles or not. So he needs to see, so there is a section called introduction in every article where you write the literature review. So in that literature review, you cite the oldest article and you cite the latest article. So that is where the editor gets the knowledge that you have done enough research, you have actually done a lot of study, and that is why you know a lot about this particular topic. And then the editor also wants to see whether you have cited the top journals and cited the leading scientists. So the editor, again, as I told you, he has tools to identify. So he would want to see whether you have identified the top scientists in that field. Have you cited his work? Have you identified the top journals? Are you citing those journals? Because these are impactful journals. So all these things matter, right? Where can you find all this information? So I would tell you, you can find all this information online, but it will never be available to you in a condensed form or an appropriate form. The best tool, because we are from Elsevier, the best tool that we recognize is Scopus. And I think Scopus has a lot of potential to answer all these questions and answer your specific questions to all these, and you can get an answer at a click of a button. Okay, so let's come now, having understood what the editors want and having understood what the reviewers are looking for. Now I think we have set the tone to understand how we should write an article or how we should develop a manuscript. These are the 7 important steps that you need to take care if you wish to write a good research article or impactful research article. So the first important point is thinking. Think before writing. Choose the right journal or article type. Use the right process to write a paper. The language, as we talked about. Ensuring that the paper is up to date, latest, and is it in the right context. Using the correct article structure and being prepared for the common questions asked by the editors and reviewers. So we'll take them up one by one. So what is thinking before writing? So this actually means that do not think as an author, right? Think as a reader, how your paper could be more clear, logical, and easy to read, right? So it is always advised that you first note down the central message of your research and you write it down somewhere. What is the one message that you are wanting to convey to your readers, right? Then summarize your entire research that you have done in, let's say, 1 or 2 sentences, right? That will give you the condensed summary of your entire work, right? Then you note down what is the novelty of your work. Why is your work important? What is new that you have reported, right? Now, once you have done all this, go to one of your friends or family members who's not related to this field, right? And try and explain this to them. Now, again, this is a recommendation that we are giving. So if you can do this, and if you can convince your friends and family who are not subject experts or who are not from this particular field, if they can understand your work easily, the subject experts, which are the editors and reviewers, will do it at a click of button. So if you can make your friends, family understand, anyone can understand, right? So please make sure you follow all these steps. And I think your first step, which is thinking before writing, is accomplished. What else do you need to think? So not think, but actually read. Every journal has a guide for authors, right? So you need to pay attention to the entire guide for authors. And we always recommend never read the guide for authors only once. We recommend you read it twice, because every time you read it, you will find something new in that guide for authors, right? So basically, the guide for author talks about the layout and section lengths of a particular journal, the nomenclature, abbreviations that need to be that you can use, right? The referencing format, very important. Every journal uses a different referencing format, like APA, Harvard, Chicago, IEEE, Nature. So the guide for authors will tell you what format does this journal use. Then what type and number of figures and tables. You might be aware every journal specifies that only, let's say, 10 figures or 5 figures or tables can be inserted. You cannot insert more than that. So those things are also specified under guide for authors. Then the statistics, basically the, let's say, the impact factor, the SCImago journal ranking, site score, etc. It's all reported in the journal homepage. And then guidelines to submission and the link to submission to that particular journal. Then it also tells you who's the author, who are the co-authors, so you can have a knowledge about who are the people behind this journal, right? Then very important part is choosing the right journal. I think all of you at one stage of your career would have come across this issue of choosing the right journal. How do I choose the correct journal? So we always recommend that whenever you choose a journal, you need to take into account a few things. First, you need to understand and read the aims and scope of a journal, because what you are trying to publish in, you need to understand whether that particular portion or subject falls under the scope of the journal. And you'll be surprised to know more than 40% of articles are desk rejected from an editor's table because the topic does not fall in their aims and scope. So this portion is very important. Then you need to understand what are the types of articles that are published in that journal. Either it is full paper, letter, review, conference proceedings. So you should be aware of what you are submitting. If a journal does not accept review articles and you submit your review article there, it is going to be rejected, right? So you need to be aware of what a journal publishes. Then the audience. So you need to also understand who is the audience for this journal. Is the audience relevant to my work? Because if it is not, you are less likely to get citations, right? And then you should also look at the recently published papers to get an understanding what is the current interest of that journal. If you know what is the current interest, and if you see your topic complies with that, your job is half done, right? And there is another simpler way to choose journals. Every publisher has a journal finder tool. On your screens now, you can see the Elsevier journal finder tool. You can actually see on this tool, if you go to journalfinder.elsevier.com, you will be able to insert your title, abstract, and the appropriate field of research, and just click a button and it will suggest you all relevant journals from Elsevier that actually publish articles in your topic, right? So it makes it easier. Then after that, it will also give you journal insights. So for every journal, let's say it recommends 5 journals to you, also give the statistics for those journals. What is the site score? What is the SJR, etc., etc. And then you can take up a decision based on all these metrics, right? Then using the right process to write a paper. So as we discussed earlier, you have noted down the central message. You need to take care of the figures, the tables, the images. You need to know the number, how many, which are the ones that I am choosing, because you may have 10 images, but the journal only allows 5. So you need to choose the top 5 and make it relevant to your topic, right? Make it relevant to what you have written. And then choose the references, which is very important. Choose your references very selectively. You should be very selective about your references. And I'll give you an example to explain this, right? Never judge. So as I said, don't judge any article based on number of citations. So, or one factor. So never judge an article based on citations only. So if I ask you a generic question, give you 2 articles, which article is better? Most of you would say the article that has more citations. But you need to also understand there are so many things behind this. First, you need to understand that there is a year of publication behind it. So let's say an article is published in 1980 and another article is published in 2019. Now, can you compare based on citations? No, right? So you need to also understand what has been the impact of that particular article. So choose your articles or references very selectively, because as soon as you cite an article, your article becomes connected to that article. And if you see that that article is getting a lot of citations, a lot of attention recently, that means your article is also going to be highlighted because you have cited that article, right? So please make sure that you take care of all these things. Choose your references very smartly. So again, when you write, the process of writing an article, when you start it, the first draft that you write should be very raw. You should not think about grammar, English, anything. Your first draft should ensure that you have noted everything that you want to put in the paper. Everything. It could also be in, not in sequence. It may be here and there, but make sure you cover everything, right? And again, once you read it, once you write it, then you read it as a critical reader, and you try and see whether the message that you are trying to convey, the message that you had noted down earlier, the central message, is it being conveyed in the correct way? Is it being conveyed in the correct format, right? If that is there, that means that the viewers also will be hooked onto your paper and would read it further. So what are the ways you can improve your writing from there? First is revision. So you revise the entire thing, sort them in particular order. So basically look at the logic of the scientific content. You identify the gaps, close the gaps, improve your paper further, remove anything that has been written again or redundancy, right? Make sure that the sentences that you are writing are simple and clear, right? There are minimal language errors. The text is coherent. So one sentence should follow the other sentence and they should make sense, right? And once you have finished your paper, do take advice or do take feedback from your co-workers, right? That actually helps in the longer way. So that is basically a pre-check that you do before a peer review. So you can sort out the small issues and the small improvements that you can make to your paper. Now, this topic we don't talk about a lot, which is language. But I personally feel this is one of the most important parts of any article, right? So first is journal editors and reviewers may reject a paper simply because of language mistakes, right? Now, they do understand that English probably is not the first language, or if the paper is written in a different language, that may not be an editor's or an author's first language. So they do understand that, but they also want to ensure that you have taken proper measures to help them, because as editors and reviewers, they get very little help, right? So publishers will never do language edits, right? So you need to ensure that you take help, proper help. Either you find a native English speaker, or you take help from your friends and seniors, or you use a paid editing service. There are open services available like Grammarly. Make sure you use those and ensure that your paper is written in the correct language. And just to get away with all this, do not copy phrases from other papers, because it may lead to plagiarism, right? And that is a further that is an ethical issue, right? So don't do that. Then so we have to understand editors and reviewers don't want to waste time. As it is, they have very less time, so they do not want to waste time on poorly written papers, right? So what you can do at your end, right, to improve this? The first thing you can do is write short sentences, write direct sentences. So don't make your sentences too long. Use less of ands, buts, ifs. So make your sentences short and direct. Of course, they should be coherent, and one sentence should go along with the second sentence. Then in one sentence, you convey one piece of information. As I said earlier, don't use too many ands and ors. One information, one sentence. Avoid multiple statements in one sentence. So all the top three mean the same virtually. The average length of sentences in scientific writing is only about 12 to 17 words. If you exceed, the editors, the readers, the reviewers, they lose interest, right? Eliminate redundant phrases. So there are a lot of times, like, I am also doing in between, I'm repeating few things. Do not do that, because again, it loses the interest of the readers if you repeat something again and again. Double check unfamiliar words or phrases. So, in the quest of writing something very, different and with a good language using a thesaurus, make sure that the essence of the sentence is not lost, right? So the more simpler it is, the more easier it is for the editor or the reviewer to understand. If you are using any abbreviations, right, like we write I.E.VIZ. Please explain these abbreviations. Or if you are writing the name of an institute, right, make sure. So let's say you write JNU, right? All of you know which institute is JNU. It is Jawaharlal Nehru University. But there are a lot of JNUs across the world. And there is another JNU in India, which is called Jaipur National University. So people may be confused, the editors or the reviewers. So you need to make sure if you abbreviate something, you write it. What does it mean? And then this is something which is very obvious, but I would just, for the benefit of everyone, use present tense for known facts and hypotheses, and use past tense for conducted experiments and results. This is something which I think every research methodology book teaches, but I've just kept it here so that it is reinforced. And these again are a few examples of how you can reduce your sentence length and how you can make a group of sentences small and relevant, right? So go through this. We will also share a copy of this. Ensure that your paper is up to date and it is in the right context. Now, this is something which is extremely important. So you need to ensure, because the editor will look at whether your research area is coherent with something that is going on in the world. It is not isolated, right? Then it builds upon previous work. So we all know that any good research is built upon a previous research. A good paper should explain the introduction, everything in the introduction, from the introduction to the relevance of the topic, the description of what has been done before and how, what is known, what is unknown, and what are the questions that still need to be answered in spite of what research you have done. And we have already read what the editors want. So I'm not repeating this again. Now, on your screens, you will see the correct article structure. Now, this is a generic article structure. So it has the title. You need to ensure that the title is interesting, concise, informative, and it includes the main finding, because your title will decide the further interest of your editor. What does the editor see, or any reader sees when he or she gets the paper? First thing, title. If the title is interesting, then they go to the abstract. So make sure, as we know, first impression matters a lot. Your title is written in the right context. The authors. So the authors should be mentioned correctly. The first author, corresponding author, and co-author, they should be mentioned. People who have not contributed should not be mentioned. Usually that has a lot of repercussion. It falls under ethics. Abstract, again, strongly decides editor's decision. So the abstract, we've already discussed what should be in the abstract, how an abstract should be written. Keywords. So when you choose the keywords for a particular paper, you need to ensure that the keywords are searchable in ANI databases, abstract and indexing databases like Scopus, Web of Science, etc. And use only established abbreviations. Don't use abbreviations which you have made. Use the ones which are common, like DNA. Everybody knows that DNA is full form, right? So please make sure that you use the correct abbreviations. And again, I have mentioned, because this is something that needs to be reinforced, read the guide for authors not once, not twice, but as many times as you can. Because this guide for authors is actually your Gita, your Bible. It will tell you what is required for a journal and what you need to do, what you should not do. Then comes the introduction. As we all know, the entire literature review is here. So you write the problem, is if there is an existing solution, you mention that, and you also choose which is the best, what is its limitation, and what you want to achieve from this paper, right? And this is particularly, so from here, the reviewers' jobs come into the picture. Now the reviewers will want to see this. Methods, very clear. You need to mention all the methods that you used, the equipment, the material, everything needs to be mentioned with the brand. So that, and why do you need to do that? Because it should be replicable. That is why you need to mention everything, because anyone to validate can replicate this and get similar results like you. Results and discussion, of course, where you write the data, figure, tables, and you mention what you found and why is it important, how it is going to impact socially and economically. Conclusion, very short and clear. Justify your work in that field and suggest future experiments, right? Then comes acknowledgements. So you need to acknowledge all the people who have helped you for technical, language, comments, financial supporters, so the financing agency, proofreaders, suppliers of materials, etc. Whoever you want to mention, your family members for giving you psychological support, etc., etc. So anything of all the people who have helped you in any way through the entire journey of writing this particular article. Then references, of course, something which is the most important, as I said, one of the most important. Choose your references smartly. Make sure you use the correct format. If a paper accepts, APA and you have written your article in a different format, no, that will not be acceptable. So you need to make sure you do that. Avoid excessive self-citation or irrelevant self-citation. See, this is a major turn-off for any editor or reviewer. If they notice that you have excessively self-cited yourself, then for them it is a sign of not following ethics. Again, this is a debatable topic. There are exceptions, but usually the editors and reviewers do not like a lot of self-citation. Right? And then followed by the supplement information. So if you have any supplementary data, so let's say a journal only accepts 6 figures, you have another 4, so you can submit them as supplementary information. It will not be present in the main article, but it will be present as an attachment. So if you are using Science Direct, if you go to any article, on the left-hand side, you will see that there is supplementary material and you can download it and use it. So that is how useful it is. Supplementary material can be PPTs, can be audio files, video files, can be calculation sheets, can be Word files, formulas. So do read all these information also, because it may be very useful for replicating your work. Then be prepared for the common questions that are asked by the reviewers. So comment on the importance and validity and generality of conclusions. Mention how your paper fits within the journal, right? Are the article title and abstract in line with the content? Are your experiments correct? Are they replicable? Then why did you need these tables, and what these tables say? The quality of these pictures and tables, very important. If again the quality is not good, again a turn off for the editor or reviewer, right? And then, are the references accurate, up to date, balanced? These are a few questions that the reviewers would want to see and get answers to. Now comes submission of a manuscript. Now, again, you need to understand that submission of a manuscript is a very critical step, and cover letter forms a very important part of submitting an article, because this is your opportunity to convince the journal editor and the reviewer that they should publish your article, right? So you should take that opportunity. You should make sure that you mention everything. Why is your article so important to that journal? What will the readers get out of it? What impact may it have in the future, right? And then you can also suggest reviewers. So let's say if you are willing to assign a few reviewers, you can always suggest to the editors in the cover letter. Final decision is of course with the editor. Then you also mention about your background, your expertise. That gives a feel to the editor about who you are, what work you have done, right? Then some significance or relevance to the journal, we have already discussed that. So main thing is you should clearly mention what is new, how is it going to be reused, how it is going to benefit the journal as a whole. If the editor can understand this part, he is fine to send it to reviewers for a detailed review. And on your screens now, you will be able to see a sample of a good cover letter, right? So which mentions the approval from all authors, explanation of the importance of research, and then suggested reviewers that the author wants to suggest to the editor. Now the editor has the final decision to either accept or reject a paper. He may do so after minor changes, right? So we need to ensure that the editor needs to decide on all the reviewers' comments. So the editor will look at all the reviewers, what they have commented, whether there is a consensus to accept the paper or reject the paper. So the editor will take a decision on that, right? If there are any suggestions from the reviewers or the editor, please make sure that you address all those queries when you resubmit your paper, right? All the changes that they have suggested. And if there are any questions on any of the experiments or figures or numbers, make sure you do additional experiments, additional calculations, so as to justify and come back stronger with your justification, right? Publishing ethics. Now, this topic is again a debatable topic, and we can have 2-3 days talking about this topic. I have tried to condense everything on a few slides. So their ethical issues are again to ensure integrity and trustworthiness of scientific work, right? So there is a committee on publication ethics, which is called COPE. It is a forum for editors and publishers of peer-reviewed journals. And this committee decides on the correct guidelines and flowcharts. They are readily available online and people can go and view them, right? And they can also see what are the detailed publication ethics. You see there is a website mentioned on your screen, which is www.publicationethics.org. There's a lot of things mentioned. What I have done is I've tried to summarize everything on one page. So basically, guide for authors, as I said earlier, please read it. It will have all the information. For Elsevier journals, we have specifically a website which talks about publishing ethics, right? During publication, during submission, you are also asked to confirm a few declarations. So please ensure that you read them correctly, because that will also give you a lot of information about the ethics that this journal particularly follows, right? Editors will usually reject papers if they observe any misconduct, because they don't want to have a bad name on a journal. And I will show you what happens when such a thing happens, and how the paper is reflected, right? So usually unethical publishing behaviors include data fabrication, falsification. So sometimes we think that, okay, we can use a particular sentence, change it from active to passive voice and reuse it. But editors and tools have become smarter now, so they can detect who is doing all these things, and they can actually understand the language, and then the plagiarism percentage might increase up, right? And more publishers are using different softwares like Crosscheck, Turnitin, etc., which can help you get this exact number of how plagiarized a paper is, right? Again, multiple submissions to different journals is also unethical. If you have sent your paper to one journal, you need to wait for the journal to accept or reject. If it is accepted, you are not supposed to send it to another journal, of course. If it is rejected, only then you submit your article to another journal. then not mentioning the authors who have contributed and mentioning authors that have not contributed. Again, a part of ethics. And all these things, you might feel that you can get away with this. But yes, sometimes people do get away with this, but when it is detected, there are serious consequences, and the consequences rate from retraction of papers to even loss of jobs in some cases. So please make sure. Now, retracted papers, we talk about retracted paper. Let's say publishing ethic is detected, a defaulter is detected at a later stage when the article has already been published and there are so many citations. So do you think that article will get away with that? No. The article, retracted paper does not mean that the paper is removed. Retracted paper looks like this, if you haven't seen one before, on your screen. This paper remains on the internet, on the website forever, which means it is a continuous sign of showing, and we see the editors, the author's name are clearly mentioned. So the authors are clearly highlighted, and the paper is written as retracted, and at the end of the paper there is a note on why the paper was retracted, which brings a serious shame to a author, right? So please make sure you follow the publication ethics in detail and do not fall into such situations. Now, once you have written your paper, do you think that the job is done? No. Any product is not successful without marketing. Marketing is the heart. Now, your article is your product. You need to make sure that your article is marketed in the correct way. It is sent out to millions. More and more people read your article, which actually gives you an idea of how many citations you are going to get. The more visibility, the more your paper is being highlighted, shared, the more citations you will tend to get. Now, publishing your article in a good journal is one way. What you can do at your level, at author level, is also there on your screen. You can use these social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Google Scholar, LinkedIn, Mendeley. All these tools provide a platform for social networking, which you can use. You can highlight your article there, share links of your article. Just imagine if you share a link of your article on LinkedIn, right? Just take an example. Let's say your article was shared by 10 more people, which is again shared by 10 more people. So just by a share of your article can reach out to so many people. If 50 people read your article, right? Let's say 20 are interested, 10 download it, 5 save it to Mendeley or their systems. So at least with one paste of your article link on a social media platform, you were able to get 2-3 citations, which is a very good number. So use these platforms effectively. They are there for free, and you as authors can make the best use of these platforms to ensure that your paper reaches out to masses. So to conclude our entire discussion today, I'm just going to conclude the points. Think before writing, choose the right journal and article type, use the right process to write an article, make sure the language is correct, it is written in the right context, you use the correct article structure, be prepared for the common questions asked by editors and reviewers. You should always write a good cover letter and mention everything that we discussed. Revise all comments and address all questions raised by editors and reviewers, even if you disagree. Obey publication ethics, promote your paper, and I would again tell you, read the guide for authors again and again. That will make your life much easier, right? And something which is very, very, very important. So to help you save time, you researchers, and achieve your objectives as you continue to work from home, we have launched the Elsevier Researcher Academy, which is free to use, right? We recognize that continuous learning is an essential part of this journey, and we would like to help you navigate your research journey accordingly. Use these platforms to get certificates and rewards as you progress through the modules. So there are a lot of modules here which you can take up. These are like courses, certified courses, and you can get Elsevier certified. On Researcher Academy, you will find free e-learning modules developed by global experts, career guidance, and latest research news from global research community. You can use the link on your screen, which is researcheracademy.elsevier.com, and you can get into this portal, right? Use this link, and we would love to hear your thoughts and feedback on this site, because this is something which is very useful. It will help you in research preparation, writing, publication process, navigating peer review, communicating your research. It will also help you become, let's say you want to become a peer reviewer in the future. So you can take up a course which helps you in defining what is required for you to become a successful peer reviewer, and you can be Elsevier certified, and you can be amongst the pool of certified Elsevier peer reviews. You may be contacted in future, right? So basically, Researcher Academy provides you a free access to countless e-learning resources designed to support researchers on every step of their research journey. Browse our extensive module of catalog to uncover a world of knowledge and earn certificates and rewards as you progress. So please go through this. With this, I would like to thank you so much. At Elsevier, we've partnered with the scholarly community for over 140 years to curate and verify knowledge. And now, as an information analytics business, we are committed to bring that rigor to a new generation of Elsevier platforms. We recognize the potential of you scientists to find new answers, reshape human knowledge, and tackle the most urgent global crisis. We want to make analysis easier for everyone working in science and medicine and other subject areas, enabling them to manage their work more efficiently and spend more time in making breakthroughs. That's why Elsevier is evolving. Growing from our roots in publishing, we are creating analytical solutions to serve the needs of science and health. Elsevier leads over other publishers in terms of relative impact, share in top cited articles worldwide. Elsevier is thus empowering knowledge. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe, stay home, maintain social distancing. Let's fight COVID-19 together. Thank you so much. Garima. Okay, so thank you everyone who were part of this discussion. We regret to inform you that Professor Rajiv could not be with us because of certain urgent meetings at AICTE, but he has conveyed his best wishes. We will try to take up a few questions that you have mentioned in the question answer box. I will just go through them. Allow me a few minutes to just go through the questions, and I'll try to answer them as many as I can. Okay, so some of you have asked about comparison of UGC CARE list journals with Scopus. So again, we did not discuss a lot about Scopus here, but just for your information, all journals in Scopus except 70 are UGC CARE listed, right? So you should be pretty clear with the review process. The review takes a lot of time, both at UGC level as well as Scopus level. The journals on Scopus are subject to very high scrutiny from the content selection and advisory board, which usually do not form part of the Scopus committee. So it is independent. So whatever data you get is highly authentic. So you need to find that. Then there are questions about review time. So a lot of people have asked, how much time does it take for a journal to review? So, sir, again, this depends on journal to journal, topic to topic, because let's say to review a paper on coronavirus today, it is easy because we know there are so many people right now working in this field. If there is a topic which is very unique, very new, it is difficult to find reviewers. And then you also need to understand reviewers are people like you and me, or basically like you doing research, right? Now they have their own work, so they will do this review work when they have time, right? So you need to give them time. Every journal specifies how many days or how many months it is going to take for the paper to be published. But usually what happens is the review process takes a lot of time. If you want to know the average time taken for any publish an article, please go through the journal homepage. It is mentioned there. Okay. Thus, publication in conference proceeding has less value than than reputed publishing house. Okay. So I think I get your question is on difference between conference proceeding, article, etc. So, sir, my answer to this is very simple. Every subject area or every topic, I would rather say, has its own niche, right? So if I say that, if I talk about artificial intelligence or big data, you would see most of the papers published in conference proceedings. Then how, and we all know it is a good paper. Then how do you differentiate if it is written in a conference paper or an original article? That is why CiteScore takes into account both conference papers and articles and give them equal importance. If you look at Scopus, Scopus also takes into account all conference papers, all articles, all review articles. So when this NIRF ranking is done, or when, let's say, individual author analysis is done at your institute level using Scopus, it takes into account all these journals, be it in a conference proceeding or in a original article. Okay. A lot of people are asking about good journals in particular subject areas like engineering, mechanical science, material science, chemistry. So my answer is pretty simple. Go to www.scopus.com. On top, you would find a tab which says source. Now, even if you don't have access to Scopus, you can access that tab. You go to Scopus source, and then you can filter journals based on subject areas and ranking. So you can see which journals are top ranked, a high impact factor, CiteScore. All this information is available on the Scopus platform. So do visit the Scopus platform. You can also download the Excel file, which gives you all the subject categorization, right? So that will make it easier for you to find journals in your particular area, right? Again, I have a lot of questions, so I will take up a few questions. Don't mind if your questions is not answered. We will distribute a form to all of you where you can put in your questions later on and we can answer them. Till the time, I'll take a few questions. Okay, look, I am getting a lot of questions about Scopus and Web of Science. I think we have another session tomorrow which talks about Scopus and Web of Science, not Web of Science, basically talks about Scopus, Mendeley, Science Direct. So if you are interested to know about that, you can join in tomorrow and we can have a fruitful discussion there.
Thank you, Vishal.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure the audience has a lot to take away from your informative session. I'm grateful to everyone who has joined this webinar today. We would be highly obliged if you can share your valued feedback through the Google form we'll be sharing later today or by tomorrow post this session. You may also mark your unanswered questions, if any, in the same form. With this, we will conclude this session. Thank you so much again. Stay safe, stay healthy.